As we celebrate International Women's Day, it's important that employers do everything they can to recruit and retain a diverse workforce. It makes perfect business sense to embrace modern recruitment and flexible working practices, because we know that diverse companies are more innovative and creative, and we know that motivated workforces are more productive. During today's discussion, I hope you'll reflect on how your businesses can learn and build on the challenges you face during this unprecedented time, and how you can adopt some important best practices. It's fascinating to hear about Amazon's Amplify programme and the series of initiatives it has produced. The programme sets out to strengthen self-confidence, boost contribution in meetings, and teaches leaders to seek out and champion diverse perspectives. I hope you will all enjoy the discussion.
Hello and welcome to our small business discussion, where we'll be exploring how small businesses can champion change within their organisations. My name's Liz Wainwright. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a senior product manager at Amazon, and I'm delighted to be the host for our panel today. The last year has been a challenge for all of us in many different ways. Small business owners have had to adapt to the new normal, seeing their physical shops closing, to managing teams remotely, and building the resilience to keep fighting and keep their businesses going. This International Women's Day, we want to discuss with and learn from some incredible entrepreneurs and leaders in their fields on how they have adapted to challenges, particularly in the last year. From learning to speak up in a world of virtual meetings to adapting to change with confidence, we'll hear best practices and some of the challenges our panellists have faced. Within the theme of this year's International Women's Day, all of our panellists are champions of change, and we look forward to discussing their experiences. And speaking of championing change, we're also excited to find out more about Amazon Amplify, an initiative with a focus on fostering an inclusive environment that shares confidence-building techniques to support individuals' resilience and ability to adapt in periods of unprecedented change. But first, let's meet our panellists and hear a bit more about who they are. So I'd like to introduce you to Emma Jones, CBE, who is the founder and CEO of Enterprise Nation, a small business community that supports 500,000 people each year to start and grow their own business. Enterprise Nation has worked with Amazon for the past 5 years and is currently delivering the Amazon Small Business Accelerator, which is training businesses across the UK to build stronger online businesses. We also have Brigitte Ricou-Bellan joining us, who is a senior leader at Amazon, the Director for Consumer Electronics and Entertainment Media, and also sponsor of our Diversity, Equity and Inclusion initiative. In her free time, Brigitte loves travelling, performing arts, running and cycling, as well as reading and spending time with her husband and her 2 children, Thomas and Alice. And finally, we have Christian Azolan, a visual fine artist and small business owner from London, who started his business 12 months ago at the start of the very first UK lockdown after being made redundant. His small business has gone from strength to strength, and he's sold over 375 limited edition fine art prints across Europe, the US, South Africa and Australia. He's secured distribution deals with Wayfair both in the UK and Germany, plus Saatchi Art, Simply Noir and Curated Crowd, and at the end of last year started selling on Amazon Handmade. His latest art series, The Birds, explores how hard it's been for many in lockdown and explores the theme of flight, fantasy and freedom. It is brilliant to have you all with us to discuss your experiences and how you've managed to adapt to change throughout your careers and lives, especially throughout the pandemic. And Emma, thinking about the past year and all the different changes businesses have had to adapt to, how did you best prepare for the new norm and what have you learned since then?
Well, I guess we're still preparing, Liz, and it's really interesting actually that the 12 months at Enterprise Nation, we've become very close to our small business community. So I guess just to give a little bit of context, back in March of 2020, when COVID first kind of hit the UK, lockdown happened, we kind of refer to that first phase as what we call the dash for cash. So we have thousands of businesses coming onto Enterprise Nation and essentially saying, how do I find the funding to keep trading? So that kind of first couple of months was very tense. People were feeling very panicked about the future of their business. But actually then in May time, things started to change. And that's when we saw this huge digital adoption. And the number one topic that businesses wanted to know from that point onwards was, how do I do more online? So it was into that environment that we did launch the Amazon Small Business Accelerator. It launched in June 2020. And small businesses, and you'll hear this from Christian, have done an incredibly amazing job of just being adaptable. They've responded incredibly quickly to the conditions that they faced.
Yeah, absolutely. It really has been a roller coaster year, as you say. And Christian, you in particular have gone through lots of change this year. You started out as a teacher and now you're an artist and a small business owner. Can you talk to us a little bit about if there was a moment for you where you were at a crossroads making that decision?
Yeah, I mean, there's been, I think over the last 12 months, there's been many crossroads, but one that really sticks out is the fact that when I started my business and the fact that I'd just been made redundant, and it was this idea of what do I do now? What decision do I do now to go forward? And not just thinking about finding another job and not just thinking about what I want to do next, but what career do I want? What do I want to do now for the rest of my life that's going to actually make me happy? And I think the major crossroads within that was speaking to my partner when we just gone into lockdown. I thought, yes, I'm going to do this business. I'm going to start it. And actually saying to him, actually, we need to move. We're going to move in with my mum and we're going to save money. We're not going to pay rent. Every penny we earn will go back into this business. And that is a major crossroads, because just to give you a bit of context, I left home when I was 16. I put myself through college, put myself through university, been working all this time. And now suddenly, as a 37-year-old, with this thing that's happened that's completely thrown everybody up in the air, what changes do I, how do I adapt to this? So now turning back and speaking to my family and saying, actually, I'm going to move in with you. And I haven't been home since I was 16. That is a major crossroads. And it's something that's really tough to really do, and also turn around somebody and say, I'm going to need your help and support over the next 12 months. I'm going to need you to be there for me emotionally. You know, all these things are really, really tough. And for me, that major crossroads was really having that conversation, having that courage to have that conversation, have that conviction, and really believe you're going to make this a success, because I've never run a business before.
And it's brilliant to hear how you've adapted to those changes. And I think you spoke there really about the uncertainty and the not knowing of how long you're going to be there or what's going to come next. And I think that that's something that's consistent within Amazon as well, Brigitte, in terms of the fact that Amazon is known for innovation, for constantly launching new products and services for customers. How do you manage to not get overwhelmed in an ever-changing business environment?
Yeah, quick question, Liz. I'm really kind of impressed and moved by all the stories. But the context of Amazon maybe just being a bit broader, which in many ways it's an organization. It's been much easier probably than small businesses. One reason why I joined Amazon is exactly that. There is a lot of encouragement and push to innovate at all levels, and that's really what Amazon has been about. And I tend to welcome change. Is something which has been a big constant in my life, and launching some new experiences or new products or testing. And I think many of us at Amazon really thrive on that. But we balance this amount of changes, and I think that's been exacerbated, of course, this year by the external context, by having some very clear, what I call sometimes North Pole, and for us it's really about the customer, and some of you have heard about those leadership principles at Amazon, one being customer obsession. So the way we think about new ideas, new products, pivoting, adapting is always focused on what we say, call working backwards from the customer. And I think that makes things, very simple, very tangible and very powerful. And then we have some very, established mechanisms to make sure we have processes to vet and assess an idea, make sure it makes sense, and then, find resources to be able to essentially make that happen. And so, I think we've been guided by also trying to play a role in that context, changing so much in the UK specifically, and launching, the Amazon Small Business Accelerator program has been part of that. We've been so proud of being able to do that and maybe help, some businesses becoming more digital, and we definitely have a lot of resources and expertise we can share. But we've also done, importantly helped on some of the COVID testing. I think we've shipped more than 7 million testing kits, and also continue to do something I really care about, which is delivering those magic breakfasts for kids who really need. We've had to find smart ways to continue to provide wonderful breakfast for, I think it was 3 million kids.
Brilliant. I think it's fascinating to hear all of the new ideas that have managed to be launched even within the times of COVID, and seeing how you can deal with that change. I thought it was really interesting there, Brigitte, how you said, you have the great ideas and you innovate, but then you also talk about, the resources, the execution, and how you then go about promoting it. And promoting your business often requires you to, again, step outside your comfort zone and face insecurities. So, Emma, I'd be really interested to know if you have one piece of advice for overcoming self-doubt.
Well, lots of advice about overcoming self-doubt. I guess one is to be really well prepared. And then, of course, I would say this, I'm very biased, but surround yourself with support. So there's people who are at the same stage as you in business. And I can't begin to tell you the number of times where I've seen, and this is quite a physical thing, you don't see it as much with virtual events, where physically you will see a business owner say to another business owner, I don't know, something like, oh, I'm figuring out how to do my exporting, or, I'm thinking about taking on a person, but financially it's going to sort of be quite trying. How do I do that? Then the other person says, oh, I did that 6 months ago. This is what I did. And you see the confidence rise in the other person, because as soon as you feel I'm not alone in going through this experience, it makes you feel more confident that you're not the crazy one. And of course, you get that peer support. So I would say, in terms of kind of trying to reduce doubt, and I have to say, fear is not a terrible thing, because fear drives a lot of founders. It makes them hungry, it makes them innovative. So I'm not saying drive out all the fear, because it's not always 100% bad. But of course, if you want to keep on building, keep on growing your business, do that preparation, and absolutely surround yourself with support, which, as I say, is fellow founders who are at the same stage as you, but get that kind of trusted expertise and advice as well.
I just want to add that I think as an artist, I live with doubt, because when you're creating, you think with yourself, is it good enough? Am I doing the right thing? And like Emma said, you've got to kind of listen to the experts, listen to the people that really matter, that can really help you and push you along. Because I think we're all so used to doing something and almost like handing it in for homework and think, is this good enough? Am I doing the right thing? Does it make sense? But I think you've got to almost listen to your gut, but also find the experts. I make sure that I've got a circle around me of people who are other artists who might be doing similar work to me, and they can help and support me. And sometimes we show each other the creative process of what we're actually doing at that time. So I think that doubt, you've kind of push it to the back of your mind, but also use it to fuel you and push you forward. There's a reason you're starting this, so finish it. It's better to finish it and then maybe fail than not having done it at all, because you never started in the first place.
Who was it, Christian, who said only the paranoid survive?
Don't know. Right, I like that. I love that.
I'm going to keep that quote, Emma. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Some really practical tips there, but also that acknowledgement that doubt is inevitable. And one way of overcoming that is really with resilience. And we know that resilience and agility are both extremely important when building a career or building any business. Brigitte, interested to hear how you keep going when faced with challenges in your day-to-day.
Yeah, look, when I look at Christian's story and other stories, I'm so impressed, and I think in some ways, current year has been really difficult for me personally, specifically, but the professional context is much easier when you're in a large organization. So it's just so amazing to see some of those kind of small businesses pivoting, and I cannot imagine how difficult it must have been in many instances to just have to change completely your business model, learn new skills. And I think it's amazing what you've been doing at Enterprise Nation specifically, and we're glad to be able to support that. I think for me, a few things. When I think about resilience and I look back, and not just at the last year, I kind of like this idea when you think about the definition of resilience, when you think about materials that can stretch like an elastic, and at some point go back. And I think sometimes, you get stretched to the limits and you think it's never going to go back. And for me, and I don't have magic recipes. I need to take a step back and being able to be just self-aware individually. The second piece, which I think is key, and it's something I've really tried to champion with my teams, not just, being the one being open, but also listening to others, being open, talking about some of the things you're going through, and being able to have conversations about that. I think it really helps. And sometimes, just articulating some of the challenges, the need maybe to pivot a business model, the need to change a project, helps you figure out essentially what you have to decide. Third thing, maybe, it's something specific to the COVID context and all the challenges, but being good to yourself. And that means for me, often, taking a break, being able to acknowledge that I need to take a step back, and taking the time to do that well. And there is lots of discussions around well-being and being able potentially to, again, self-reflect. I think that's key, but sometimes you just need a little bit of time to slip on it, as you say, also. And then suddenly you see the forest and no longer the trees, you problem solve.
No, it's really interesting. Speaking of resilience, one of the things that we have observed in the small business sector, and I'm not saying that anyone would have wished for what's kind of, happened in the past 12 months, but coming out of this episode is a whole sector of small businesses who feel much more mentally resilient than they did going into it. So I've heard so many founders say, if I've managed to trade through this past 12 months, I can trade through anything. And of course, they're kind of saying it with an element of relief, but there's a lot in that where we feel, having that attitude of, if I can get through this, I can get through anything else, will keep the small business sector quite robust. So it's been really interesting to see, as I say, what you wouldn't have wished for has actually had some positive impacts on small businesses.
Yeah, very interesting. I think that's completely true. And it's true on people as well. You see, people rising to expectations, changing, learning new skills. I just think that's remarkable in some ways. And it's hard to say that in such a difficult context, but I think there is some truth to that. Christian, you're an example of that, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, I think that visual, Brigitte, that you just shared of the elastic band has really struck a chord in terms of what everyone has been through in the last year and managing to come out of the other side. It's really inspiring. And Christian, you touched upon it briefly already, the fact that you have been through so much within the pandemic and been through a really challenging time, but it has also been very, very inspiring to hear your story. I'm interested just to touch a little bit on how you found the courage and support to start in the field, how you decided what to do next when faced with that decision.
I think when I was faced with that decision of starting my business and becoming an artist, I think what was interesting was I had to separate the two from a business to the artist. Having studied fashion design and illustration, I knew I had the artist side in my toolkit. I knew I had that. I knew I could be an artist, if that makes sense, in terms of I knew I could create something new that's visually appealing to other people to put on their walls. What I didn't have was what I would consider the business side of it. I'd never done a website before, didn't know anything about becoming self-employed, had no idea what accountants were, didn't know idea what trademarks were, had no idea how to run a shop, inventory, how to do sales, how to do marketing, how to do newsletter, how to do social media, how to speak to PRs, no idea. So what I did was I armed myself and I educated myself. So I think the courage comes from arming yourself, making sure you've got absolutely the right information, the right time from the right experts to be present in the room to make those decisions going forward.
And we heard from Christian there a bit about how to get started. You have an idea and then how you can build it. And Brigitte, once you have a great idea that works, the next thing to do is scale it and grow. How do you influence within a business like Amazon?
Yeah, look, and I think you said that you make it, Christian, sounding easy to have an idea, but I think that's a really hard part, quite frankly. I think in some ways, finding a great idea that works is really, really, really difficult. Two things for me. It's one, engaging stakeholders, other folks, and building trust and getting them excited about their ideas, and then finding, ideas simply to make your idea bigger. And at Amazon, of course, it's there are a few avenues which are fairly kind of, I would say, classic. One is, you have started an idea in the UK. Well, make this idea pan-EU or make it global, or you've started in specific business for a specific customer segment, make that broader. And, I'm just making the connection a little bit to Amplify, because I know we're going to talk about that. But in Amplify, in a way, it's how we thought about that. We had this idea initially. We really wanted to focus on building context for meetings and conversations which were more inclusive. We thought about, women specifically, and the classic confidence gap we talk about, but we also wanted to broaden that. And we started creating those trainings. They were very successful. We thought we had a good impact. We started rolling them out to other parts of the organization, still internally. So in the EU, we have a few organizations who have even, taken Amplify globally. And then we started thinking, what about, pushing that externally? We think it has big impact. It's a great idea. It's worked. And that's how essentially we started discussing with Enterprise Nation, and are today discussing incorporating that in some of the Amazon Small Businesses Accelerator program, which, so that's the journey of an idea, step by step, and learning along the way and changing and improving. So really that would be my response to the question, Liz. But having the idea is really the hard part, I think. Again.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Having the idea is the most difficult place to get started. But it's interesting there that Brigitte spoke about always asking the question of what's next and what's next. And the answer often, and especially within the last year, has been we don't know. And Emma, leading a team when we don't know what's going to happen next, I imagine can be quite nerve-wracking. How do you think about creating confidence and a safe space for your team?
Yeah, well, I'm still learning on this, because I guess this has been the biggest learning experience for me as a founder. I guess in all of my other comments today, I've probably spoken on behalf of the small business community we represent. But when it comes to managing a team through this, I speak very personally from having, kind of done it and still doing it. Really interestingly, the whole idea of Amplify, of course, in a team of 30, we've got some more extrovert people and some who are less so. And every week we do an all-company stand-up. And it used to be, of course, the louder voices that would always speak. We've now changed the model, so every person gets a minute to go through what they've got coming up the week. I mean, it normally goes on for about 45 minutes, but anyway, 30 people get an opportunity to say, this is kind of what I've got coming up, and this is the support I need from the business. We do socials together every month. This Thursday, I mentioned we've got team drinks, which is following a creative session that our head of marketing will lead. And it's extraordinary, because I was a cynic, and when it first happened, I just thought, wow, I don't know how we're going to retain productivity. But of course, the team don't have to commute into offices. They are all, touch wood, happy in their home environments. We've made sure they've got home office equipment, that they've got good broadband. We've sent them so much food and drink every month. So it's kind of just, I guess, what we would have done in the office environment of saying, let's work together. We're probably closer than we've ever been. And it's been an extraordinary experience. And I would just say, as the final thought on that, to any other business owners who are kind of thinking, what is the advice out of all of this, is I would say you cannot communicate enough at this particular time.
It sounds like you've done a fantastic job of maintaining those connections, even virtually, and really interesting to hear how you've managed to keep that team spirit alive. Christian, I guess it's been slightly different for you as a small business owner without a big team for support. So how have you managed to make decisions? Whose advice or opinion have you sought, and how's that helped you throughout this time?
I would say again, I think I have to split it into two different ways in terms of one, making decisions and the opinions. When it comes to my art, I make the final decision, and I use my gut instinct because I'm doing something creative. So I think that's really important. But when it comes to business decisions, like I mentioned before, I arm myself in terms of the facts and the knowledge. But one person that I rely on a lot is my partner, who is not creative. He is not creative at all. If I say, oh, I'm going to go to the National Portrait Gallery this weekend, do you want to come with me? He's like, no, I'll meet you in the cafe. If I say to him, I need help moving my art from, how am I going to get my art from me designing it to the printers to a customer in South America, he will have that. I trust his opinion, and I get it because he does this for a living. So I don't just come to him for that emotional support. I come to, and I use his skills in terms of educating myself in how to do these things. So I trust his opinion.
Fascinating insight into, I guess, very different organisations there, but really some common themes around communication and seeking advice and help from others. Which brings us nicely, Brigitte, to the fact that you sponsor a programme at Amazon called Amplify. Could you tell us more about it and how it supports Amazon employees to be effective in their contributions?
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. I cannot wait. That's so, I think it's about to hear snippets about Amplify. So what is Amplify? It's essentially what we would call, an interactive program, training program mostly, but, we have the ambition to make sure it lasts a little bit beyond the training moment. And we do a few things to make sure, we create nudges. We have amplify groups, we call them communities of amplifiers who can spread the word and make sure we have ways of extending the training beyond the classroom, I would say. And speaking of classroom, I think the way we built the training initially was classroom training, and that was a bit over a year ago, 1.5 years ago, and then quickly COVID happened, and quickly, and Liz, you've been part of that, we had to kind of pivot the training, make it virtual, and also really scratch our head a little bit. I think, am I talking about that indirectly? Well, the way you did meetings, you interacted with people changed completely. And in some cases, it might have actually helped a little bit building confidence, but in some it didn't. I think the big meetings, you could see people disappearing, not on videos. And so there were some real questions about making those virtual meetings inclusive. And so what we've tried to do through Amplify is really, one, help employees and Amazon employees initially be more effective in meeting, have a stronger voice, feel more confident, feel, of course, they can participate, prepare accordingly, and we give them, a lot of, I think, tips and guidance around that, and building allyship. And you've talked a little bit about that, but I think, we realize it's super important to think about differences, and it's not just about, as we said, women or different demographics, but it's also sometimes simply differences in background, differences in ways you interact, you get involved in the conversation. It's introverts versus extroverts, and simply, different, probably different backgrounds in some ways. And that's, a very rich and deep conversation. And I just wanted maybe to say something briefly on the why Amplify. And I'm sure for many in this panel, we don't need to make the case around that, but there is lots of research which shows that, for any business and any sizes of business, really, making sure you have a diverse workforce, but also you practice inclusivity at a deep level in decision-making, in meetings, in conversations, drives better decisions, faster decisions, unbiased decision, which I think is really key to making the right decisions for diverse customers, and drives more innovation, which I think is super important, Emma, specifically for small businesses. It's also the right thing to do from a business standpoint. So that's really, the story on Amplify. We now have 1,000, I think 600, a little bit more, employees who have been trained in the UK and beyond, which we're very, very excited about.
Fabulous, thank you, Brigitte. I think it's a great summary of the training, and you touched on some interesting points there in terms of actionable tips and building that inclusivity muscle, but also spoke a bit there about becoming a better ally and how to lead inclusively. And I just wanted to see with Emma and Christian if you have examples of when someone was a great ally and the impact that had for you.
Christian, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, okay. I think one of my greatest allies over the last 12 months that I've had is my friend Gemma, who, when I first thought about starting a business, I hadn't even thought about what a business could be or what it would look like, or how that would come to pass. she saw some of my images and stuff that I've drawn on social, and then she messaged me and she said, "Oh, I really like the stuff you're doing. Where can I buy it?" And I was just like, "Oh, well, I'm not actually selling it. It's just for fun. I'm just testing some things out." And then she rang me and then she said, "No, you should start this business. I can see you doing this business. This is how you're going to do it." And sit down and just say, "No, I think you've got this. I think you can do this. And I see no reason why you can't do this." And you really do respond to them in that way. And I think that makes an interesting way of, you know, having that kind of support. That's not necessarily something that's from necessarily a friend or a family member. I think is sometimes having that separation can make a big difference.
And I'd love just to follow on actually from that comment. So again, just for small businesses that are listening, a big piece of advice we always offer at Enterprise Nation is to try and find, I guess the term that we would use is mentor. And so kind of ally, mentor, and sort of what Christian has just described, the big advice we offer to businesses when businesses say, what should I look for in a mentor? The response I always give is look for a really good listener. And people are just kind of like, why am I looking for someone to listen to me? Surely I'm looking for someone who's going to tell me how to kind of start and scale this business. But actually, when it comes to business owners, what we always say is you've got pretty much all of the answers to the questions in your own head, but what you quite often need is just someone just to talk it out to.
Really inspiring examples to hear, and great to get different perspectives in terms of the different types of allies that there are, and the relevance of things like Amplify to small businesses. And Brigitte, Amplify has so far been a great success at Amazon, and now you are opening it up to small businesses as part of the Amazon Small Business Accelerator. Can you explain why you're doing that and what you hope to achieve, and also how small businesses can get involved?
I try to do my best. Yeah. So I think, you know, on the value for, as I said, you know, employees and organization in general, I think there is a lot of evidence, but, you know, I think the research on why inclusivity matters is really universal. And we think, you know, that it's also, and Emma, hopefully you agree with us, but it's also super valuable for small businesses and also new businesses which are setting up, being able to have this kind of focus from the get-go in a way. I think it's super interesting. And one point I haven't mentioned is also, as you build teams, even if it's small teams, we think it also makes organizations, small and big, more attractive for talents, and increasingly so. And I think that's kind of super important as well. And you know, there is a lot about what I was saying earlier, which is about making teams, organizations more innovative, better problem solvers, and God knows, you know, that there is so much to solve for when you are in a small business, and when you are maybe, you know, kind of working with a very small team, or even, you know, just with just a few partners. So I think that's really helpful from that perspective. There is something also about understanding your customers much better. If you are, you know, I think an inclusive organization, really thinking about about, you know, building allyship, as we said, different kinds of ways of thinking, making decisions, different demographics. Suddenly you think about your customers as you know, your everything, as you say, Emma, I love that, as being kind of real people with needs, and you build a lot more empathy, and I do think that's really, really powerful. And so, you know, I think for all those reasons, we are super excited to be opening Amplify to kind of small businesses and small business owners. And we think it's really crucial, again, to incorporate that. And it's quite innovative to doing that, because traditionally some of those trainings around diversity and inclusion have probably been a bit more focused on large organizations. So there is something quite new, and we're so glad, again, to be part of that. So practically, and Emma, you correct me if I kind of miss anything there, but as we're launching the Amazon Small Business Accelerator, we're opening the Amplify workshops. Initially, I think it's, you know, to 100 businesses, and what we said, you know, if it's successful, we would be excited to scale that, you know, more. It's kind of pilot. And I think, you know, the overall goal of Amazon Small Business Accelerator is to train, I think, 200,000 small businesses in the UK. That's, yeah.
200,000.
200, yeah, that's such a big number. It's so impressive. And you know, the idea beyond, of course, Amplify is to help them grow and thrive, and you know, transfer skill set, and there is so much to be done there. So I think that's super exciting. So that's, one on the menu for the next, few weeks and months. And we are announcing that actually at International Women's Day, which is really big news. I'm talking about just the Amplify portion of it, of course, as already started a few weeks ago.
The other thing I'd love to say, Brigitte, is, and I'm incredibly excited that we are adding this to the Amazon Small Business Accelerator content, is that the timing is really good, because we're not expecting small businesses to do a complete 100% return to a physical office environment. And therefore, one of the things that we have definitely observed and learned over the past 12 months is the topic of inclusivity and ensuring that every voice is heard in your team. Actually, it's more of a challenge when you're not in a physical office together, because when you're working in the same space, you can read body language, you can see when people want to speak, but of course it's a lot harder to do that virtually. So I think Amplify, is brilliant training, but I think it's even more timely at the moment for business owners just to understand how to get that dynamic right.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, Emma. And we've built, I touched on that briefly, but a series of tips, both for leaders, meeting chairs, but also teams on how we bring that to life in a virtual context. And I agree, it creates actually more challenges for most people. Even if it's interesting, we've done a few surveys around that. There are a few people who are more comfortable in that context, but generally, I think it's more difficult to really include teams in meetings, everyone. So you have to work extra hard, and there are some kind of really best practices around that, which we share as part of the training.
I'm really excited to hear about this, the Amplify, and how that can work. And I think when I hear the word Amplify and what you talked about in terms of what you're doing, I think when I hear the idea of having a voice, having a platform, and incorporating that into a training that champions people, I think that can only really be a good thing. So I'm really excited about it.
It might even amplify your sales, Christian.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's good for business. Ultimately, it's good for people and it's good for business. We do that.
Yeah, it's really exciting times, and we're very excited to be able to share some more details on that soon. We are almost at the end of the time that we have together today, but to finish with, we're going to have some fun with a quick fire round. So I hope you are all ready on your buzzers for your answers. But let's just go through the last few questions. So first one is, thinking of everything you've been through in the last year, what advice would you give yourself back in 2019?
I would say it's okay to take one step back as long as you take 3 steps forward. I think that's definitely his advice for me.
Wow, that's a good one.
Some fabulous advice there. Next, tell us about one thing that you did that took courage.
Christian, you go first, because I desperately want to know what took you courage.
I think changing careers and losing that safety net of having an annual income or a salary and a boss, and becoming freelance.
This is why I didn't want to follow you, because it's really tough to follow someone who started a business, because it can be one of the most courageous things. The next step is then hiring your first person. So ours probably has been actually making hires during the past 12 months. So it's always a financial risk. You always wonder if it's going to work with the rest of the team, and of course you then just don't meet them at all. So that's probably been our kind of point, is hiring new people.
The next question is, what is your personal mission statement?
Yeah, so I've cheated a little bit, because I had to write this bio a while ago for a charity I'm a trustee of, and so I wrote, that I want to be, it's aspirational, not necessarily the reality, but I want to be a storyteller, entrepreneur, and people connector who wants to change the world. So that was my, what I thought my personal mission statement. Whether I'm delivering on all of it, I'm not sure, but I like it.
It's a great mission to have, though. I love it.
My one is borrowed. I say borrowed. It's from Andy Warhol, who's a pop art artist, and he says, "Don't think about make it art. Just get it done, and leave everybody else to decide if it's good or bad." So
that's pretty good. Yeah,
that's a very good motto to live by. I love it. And then the final thing, what is one thing that you're most excited about for 2021?
there are two things I think. I think the first one is, from a business point of view, is new opportunities and going out and doing face-to-face events. I think I'm really looking forward to that. But on a personal, selfish level, I'm looking forward to just going to a restaurant and I just want to hear someone say, would you like to see the dessert menu? I just need that in my life. I just need that. I just need somebody to just come and say, I want to stop making food.
No, absolutely. I am looking forward to losing the lockdown pounds. I used to pound around the streets of London, and now I just kind of sit. But anyway, but I think mine is the great reopening as well. That is the biggest thing that sort of I'm looking forward to. Businesses are looking forward to. It's just been, bless them, they've done an incredible job, but it's been too long, and so businesses want to get back out. Even online sellers, this is completely related to people who sell online or off. They just want to get back out onto the high street in their local communities, pick up the selling. So yeah, the great reopening, bring it on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed with all of that, and mine would be more a personal thing, but I think I love art, performing arts, and I think it's been a really difficult year for theaters, dancing. So going back to that, I would love to, and then maybe the other one is hugging people, which I really miss. So yeah.
Please, I tell you, when you and I meet, we can have a hug. I literally sent an email
Exactly.
saying, "You're a hugger. This has been a really difficult time, so I'm completely with you on that."
Great. Group hugs all round. Fantastic. Well, thank you to Brigitte, Emma and Christian for sharing your experiences with us today. It has been a really thought-provoking and inspiring discussion to learn about the ways in which all of us can be champions of change. And of course, we are really excited to be able to offer Amplify to 100 small businesses very soon to help them foster a culture of inclusion and confidence across their own organisations. Thank you very much for joining us. Stay safe. Goodbye.